What's up, guys? It's Kamea and Craig, and we are here in sunny Las Vegas with our 0-calorie drinks. We came to work out, we came to enjoy Las Vegas, and you know, you're lucky because today I get a chance to sit down with Craig and really just dig into something that I've been sort of experiencing, but also I know a lot of people have questions about it, and that is, what is the most important things you need to know about prepping for competition? So
getting through prep. Getting through prep.
Yeah, you just got to get through it.
Yep. So you're in prep. You're getting ready for a show.
Right.
You're how many weeks out?
Man, 8 weeks. Less than 8 weeks.
Yeah.
I always have to lie to myself and say it's sooner than it really is, but yeah, it's about 8 weeks. 8 weeks now.
Yeah.
So tell us, yeah. You've been in way more shows than, I mean, this will be my first one, but you've been through this many times. And I'm curious, you know, first let's talk about your first show and how you approached it, but what is the most important thing you've learned after all those shows to get you prepared for the stage?
I think the big thing is that there's a lot of noise in the marketplace, and you hear hundreds of things that you need to pay attention to and that you need to worry about.
Yeah.
And the reality is that prep is about really just a couple of things. The key one is getting down body fat wise. You got to be lean enough to be on stage.
Right.
And in some ways it's hard crowns
enough.
Everything. That's it, right?
Yeah.
That's the number one thing. The second thing behind that one is you got to maintain your lean body mass. Like, you can't lose all your muscle. Now, the reality is that there's all kinds of studies, including if you dig into the Biosphere 2 studies, showing that the amount of lean muscle mass that you actually lose is not that great, no matter what you do. But really, if we're looking at the two main things, one is lose body fat, maintain muscle.
Okay.
Some people say, just as an extra point, some people say, look, you got to build muscle in through prep, you're going to get bigger as you go, but the reality is you're in a deficit, it's harder to do weights, you know, like, I don't care what anyone says, you know, as you lose weight, you're losing leverage, you're losing intramuscular body fat, you're losing, you know, energy overall. You're
so
not
that's
going
why
to be able to push as much.
That's why I'm
you can't push as much.
Yeah,
so
I definitely noticed that.
But those are the two main things. And so you ask, what have I learned? What are the key things?
Yeah.
One is you're on a diet. You're cutting weight. You can say, oh, there's no such thing as a diet. You're editing your food, whatever you're going to call it. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, you're losing weight.
Well, I want to go back because I feel like the first thing you mentioned is just extremely important, and that is the noise. So as I started thinking about this and sort of approaching it, I started going on YouTube, and then I started talking with people. And how would you describe the noise? What is the danger of the noise when it comes to preparing for a competition?
Well, I think it overcomplicates the entire situation, right? So, like, at the end of the day, if this was the first bodybuilding show ever and no one had ever competed before and no one's ever done anything, at the end of the day, you're losing weight and you're maintaining body mass, like you're maintaining lean body mass, right? So I think the noise includes, here's all the supplements you need to take, here's the exact dial-in of macros, here's the specific foods, you gotta eat more tarragon, you get, like, it's crazy stuff like that. Then you get noise about, now as you go into prep, you have to increase your reps and your sets, and you have to do different exercises, and honestly, you probably have to do cardio unless you are already really close to where you need to be. We can cover that out later, but like the noise is just, it's so extensive, and everyone is trying to make a buck. Really is what it comes down to. Everyone's trying to make $1, and if they come up with some, hey, look, the way you're gonna get through prep is you have to do this thing. You're gonna follow this program, and my special diet that no one else has access to, and you're gonna hit peak week, and you're gonna be way ahead of it.
Yeah. So one thing when it comes to the noise that I maybe unconsciously did is I bought some Beats headphones, There's this noise canceling ones because you do want to focus when you have the time to get in the gym, because I find that block out the noise. You do have to take advantage of the time you have in the gym. Can't be talking all day, and you do have to get more serious about it. So these are really great tips. Now let's talk about the second thing that you mentioned, which is you gotta diet down, right? Like you gotta stay in a deficit. How do you know if you're in a big enough deficit? Like what is the general guidelines that you would use when you would approach staying there?
I guess the ideal situation is that, like the studies are showing that in general, if you have a gradual decline in your body weight, then you're probably going to lose less lean body tissue than otherwise.
Yeah.
There's some people, and I may be in this camp, where they would say you may need to shock the system a little bit and just dive in to the deep end early and then coast in. So like, when you look at, there's one way where you just kind of, you stay at maintenance calories where you're not gaining weight, you're not losing weight,
right.
And then you just tip the scale slightly. And most people would say, in which, as soon as you say it, it starts to not make sense.
Right.
Well, you just drop your calories by 500. But then you dropping your calories by 500, and a bikini model who already weighs 150 pounds dropping by 500, it's like they've cut double what you cut. So, like, just cutting 500 may not mathematically make sense, but it's good media, and everyone kind of uses 500. But you're going to tip the scale slightly and come down gradually. I think there's some room to come down aggressively, come back up slightly, and this is the model of cycling a little bit. And so now, at the end of the day, I believe that you're way better off to get into a week or two before peak week and be where you want to be. You want to look good going into peak week. You don't want to be starvation mode, looking like a skeleton going into peak week.
Right.
So generally, if you use 500, but you can also be a percentage. So some people say that you cut your calories by 1%, or now the other way you can measure too, and there's, in some ways, there's quite a bit of, like, you have to test it a little bit, right? And so ideally what's happening is that you have enough time that you can reduce your calories slightly, and then on a week over week basis you can see what that reduction actually does. Okay. You don't want to reduce your body weight by more than, let's say, 2 pounds. Like for someone like yourself, dropping 2 pounds every week. I guess the studies have shown. I don't have the studies handy because we're in Las Vegas. But
why? Do they not have studies here or something?
No, Las Vegas, fresh out of studies. All the studies are elsewhere. They're in Sacramento. And so, basically, if you can stay at that 2 pounds throughout your cut, you should be safe. But I guess at the end of the day, in mechanistic sort of fashion, you could say, look, I'm going to lose 5 pounds this week because that's my world, and the following week I'm going to lose 1.
Right.
And the week after that I'll lose 1, and then I'm going to lose 4. And so it isn't linear, realistically. There's some people that can dial in their diet so much so that it's like 1 pound, 1 pound, 1 pound. It's shocking that they can do it, but realistically, you've seen it on the scale over the last few weeks. It's pound, 2 pounds, 4 pounds, up 5 pounds, down 3 pounds. It just goes all over the map. So.
So a lot of these are just like general numbers and guidelines, but are there other things that you've experienced personally as you've gone through prep that you kind of know what's working, and you're like, okay, after doing this a bunch of times, this is kind of where I'm starting to feel like I'm in it now. I'm in the zone. I'm doing it.
Yeah, and I guess like part of that is I have the luxury of knowing roughly where I need to end, but you don't. I know that I need to be on stage at between 185 and 192. That's my window. We don't know where you need to be, so we don't know what it's going to take to get you there. The closer you are into the 190s, the more likely you're in the right spot. So for me, I have that luxury. Now, also for myself, I know where I add calories in life, and it's mostly in breads and dairy, and so not for any other reason than exclusively to cut calories, I cut bread and dairy as much as I can. So I still eat cheese, but I don't drink milk. Milk's got a lot of sugar in it, realistically, for the amount of protein that you get.
Right.
But yeah, so I just cut bread, and I eat bread sparingly. I don't cut it to the point where I can't touch it, or and I could never have a half a glass of milk.
Can't smell it.
No, but I try to cut out some of that stuff, and then I obviously, like most people, we cut out sugary stuff like candy and chocolates and dessert products. Despite the fact that we actually had cake tonight. We're off diet today for a minute, for 5 minutes.
He said it was okay. So generally what you're saying is, examine your diet, know what you eat, and then play within that, and that there's no noise out there saying you should do this, should do that. It's really knowing yourself, knowing what's in your house.
And then I guess part of what the coaching environment can add, like if a person has a coach, and I think a lot of coaches jump in and they make like they're a wizard, and that they've created this magical formula of foods or macros that a person's supposed to eat, and then that's gonna get you to the end line. But the reality of it is that even a coach is experimenting, because nobody, including all the best calculators in the world, can tell you what your actual calorie count is or requirement is. The only way to find out is to do a calorie exactly the same amount week over week, and see what's happening with your weight.
Okay.
It's the only way to do it.
So weight's one way to know. Are there any other ways that or that you mentally pay attention to while you're on prep to just kind of feel like you're in the zone, you're doing the right things, it's happening?
I think everyone, and every coach in the world takes pictures all the time. So we're always watching. And I think some of the stuff we hear, you're at the gym and someone will say, "Did you lose any weight?" And then the automatic response is, "Well, it doesn't matter what you weigh, it only matters how you look." But the reality of it is, you're not going on stage at 220. It doesn't matter. People may look at you and think, "Oh my goodness, you look amazing," but you're not going. And you're going to see gradual changes over time. So there has to be some balance between how you look and what the scale says. Now, at the end of the day, the scale's not lying to you, and you're not going to magically add, if you think of a month, you're not going to add 5 pounds of lean muscle tissue and lose 5 pounds of body fat that month. Never going to happen. So if you get to the end of a month and you look amazingly better than you did at the beginning of the month, and the scale hasn't changed, the scale's wrong. Something happened. Like it can't happen. You can't lose, because in a month you can't do those things. You could lose 5 pounds of body fat, but you can't gain 5 pounds of muscle. I think one of the big challenges for new people is that...
Now, just to clarify, we're talking about natural bodybuilding.
The problem with a lot of what we hear, the noise, is that once you introduce steroids or anabolics or SARMs or whatever you're introducing, the challenge is going to be that your body doesn't respond the same way it does naturally, and you can build muscle into your competition. And you hear the guys that are on here, they say it all the time. I'm building into my show. Even though I'm losing body weight, I'm building into my show. So, but in the natural world, I don't know. I don't think you can, like in 16 weeks, if that's what most people's prep is, I don't think you're going to gain, even a pound. I can't even imagine you gain half a pound. In
so
fact,
that was news to me when you told me at this point you are not going to be gaining any muscle. And what was weird to me is as I looked at photos, I felt like I looked like I was gaining muscle, but really I was just getting rid of the fat that was covering them. So these photos are quite powerful to take every week, to track, to really know. So you got the photos, you got this weight scale, you're obviously measuring, calories, things like that. Are there any other things that you can think of? Just little things that you're... I notice my clothes are fitting looser each time, so that's kind of a good sign too, right?
That's certainly one of the things that I've always noticed as I go up. I'll dial myself up to about 215, and then I'll come down to the show and I'll be at 185 before the show. So it's like a pretty broad distance, and my clothes, which I normally wear snugly anyways, at 215, did I say 115? At 215, Especially my back, everything feels tight.
Yeah.
And then when I get down to the to that 185 zone, I feel terrible because my clothes are loose and baggy. My pants are like, I literally have jeans that I can like just hold right down without doing them.
And by the way, a Canadian large is not the same as an American large. I just found that out. I went to Under Armour and they are not the same size.
Yeah. Okay. Proven scientifically. But okay, so here's the other part of the question too, is like there's some coaches and probably some athletes that instead of dialing in macros, and there's just kind of a second point to this, but instead of dialing in macros, they dial in the food. And so some coaches will give their athletes a list of, okay, it's 8 o'clock in the morning, you're gonna eat a bowl of oatmeal, then you're gonna have a bowl of carrots, then you're gonna have a banana, then you're gonna have protein, then you're gonna have, like, and they're dialing in the specific foods. Other coaches dial in just macros.
Right.
One of the things that's been well proven in most of the studies, and in this, we can pull up studies and just, lock them in here.
Yeah.
But if you're not eating enough protein, the likelihood of losing lean body mass is going to go up. Like, you just have to have enough protein in your system. And there's, like, if normally a person can survive on even 0.5 gram per pound, when you get to prep, virtually everything you'll ever see or read in studies says 1 gram per pound.
Yeah.
And some people say you should be pushing to 1.4 grams per pound, roughly in that zone.
Okay.
So that's a ton of protein. And what people find too is like, that is significantly more protein than what most people would normally eat.
Sure.
And so it becomes a bit of a struggle. And if you're just starting at 16 weeks and you're switching into this brand new macro zone, and you haven't experienced eating a lot of protein, that can be a big challenge. So you have to kind of be prepared for the protein uptick.
I definitely experienced that. I never had to. It's like the amount of protein. You're right. I've never eaten that much. Maybe occasionally when I would eat a big steak or something like that, I would hit it all at once. But but consistently throughout the day. Would you say that in order to let's go to the third point that you were making, which is to try to maintain much muscle as possible. How do we do this?
Well, I think one of the challenges to gain, or like retaining muscle mass, is that in the mirror, you're probably going to look at yourself and think you've lost muscle. And it's almost universally what's happened is, and part of it is that you've lost fat, and it looks like you've lost muscle. You've lost intermuscular fat, which makes you lose overall size. But the reality is that you probably haven't lost that much muscle. Right? It's just the reality of it. But by maintaining, you got to do two things. One is you have to eat enough protein, which is maybe even secondary to the fact that you still have to work out. You still have to be under tension, and resistance. You don't have to start doing 30 rep sets. That just, that's cardio at that point.
Yeah.
But maintaining your set count or your rep count in around 12 to 15 is like a great spot for most people where you're going to experience hypertrophy. So you have to do that all the time. And I guess one other tip would be, most people when they work out, they don't know where their weak spots are. So like really until you're ripped, we're not going to know where your real weak spots are. Exactly. But most people, I feel, they get on stage, their abs aren't where they're supposed to be, and oftentimes their shoulders aren't where they're supposed to be. So, and really, what you're going to be doing and what I do, which is physique, abs and shoulders is a big deal. So we need to focus in on making sure you do a lot of abs, a lot of shoulders, keep those two up.
Right, okay. So you got the protein, you have the making sure that you're doing enough resistance to work those muscles. Are there any other things that you can do to preserve the muscle tissue heading through a prep? Because I mean, this is what you work all year for, right?
Right.
You're trying to build and build this muscle, and then you want to see what's underneath. Are there any other things that you can think of?
So one thing you can do is you can make sure that you're taking creatine. Like I think most people take creatine, so that's going to be fairly normal.
Yep.
Maintain it throughout. There's
and you did a full video on this.
Yeah, I did a video on creatine. It was maybe
so go check that out.
Yeah,
he does an in-depth
it was on YouTube.
On creatine. It'll give you all the
probably
information you need.
almost too intellectual. We could have just said, look, everybody's taking it. Take 5 to 10 grams a day, somewhere in that zone. It's not going to make you sick. It has no side effects. Essentially, it only has upside both on a physical basis and a neurological basis. It's all good. It's good for anyone of any age. You don't have to cycle it. Just take it. On prep, and this is maybe a good point to just recall or write down, you can use creatine all the way through, right through show day, and cycling it won't necessarily work unless you're off of it for like over a month.
Okay.
But then you're really looking at a window of like at least 45 days to go off and then go back on properly. So I don't know, most people would just say don't even bother. So creatine's really good. Keeping up all your other nutrients is important. A lot of people, they cut their fats because you know, fats are high calorie. But the problem with cutting fats is how does a hormone move around in your body? Fats, right? So it moves by fats. Fats also account for the healthiness of your skin, the healthiness of your hair. Like it just, there's really good benefits to fat, so don't cut fat. Maintain your fiber levels high. Like you know, it's really tough if all you're eating is chicken. Like it's going to be hard to get fiber in, but you got to eat fiber. Right. Fiber helps your system stay consistent. That's really important thing too. But other than that, look, the other thing is you got to have good cardio. And so I think here's a trick.
Yeah.
Is I think some people get into prep and they think, okay, I hate cardio, and I think there's a good portion of population who doesn't like cardio. Yeah. But the reality is you need to do it. One goal might be, and like everyone's going to be slightly different, but I'll just throw it out as, you know, a bit of a, you know, a hyperbole, I guess. Sure. If you can lose half of the weight you're going to lose by your diet and the other half by cardio, that's a nice balance. Okay. Because it is good to eat. Like eating is good, and you're trying to eat as much as you can. Right. So, and now there's another piece to this too, and people talk about metabolic adaptations, and that's, you know, like without getting too intellectually into it.
Yeah, layman's term.
Yeah.
So what does that mean?
Metabolic adaptation is when, as you're losing weight, several things are happening to your body, and your body is going to adapt to the fact that you've lost weight. B, you're eating less calories per day, and you know things are going to change. One of the things that changes is you've lost weight. Your body requires less calories to maintain itself. Okay? This is a thermogenic adaptation. So metabolic adaptations include changes in hormones, changes in metabolic systems. Thermogenic adaptations involves your caloric requirement and the amount of heat that you generate during the day. Okay. So basically what happens is as you lower your calories, and there's, you know, I don't believe in the starvation mode, because that's probably thermogenic adaptation. Okay. But what's happening is that your body is recognizing you have less calories to use, and so it starts turning down the thermostat, and it makes it so that you're not burning as many calories, you're not moving around as much.
Is that because it's becoming more efficient, or it's slowing down?
It's technically slowing down. Like you're just not moving as much. Okay. You know, you don't walk as much, and you've noticed it. I think you've commented. It's just like I sit on the couch more. I move slower. I don't get up. The number of steps literally are different.
Unless you're in Vegas, we got a lot of steps today.
How many steps did we do?
Man,
how many steps have we done this trip?
Okay,
we've been here for a couple days.
28,000.
28,000. The day's not over.
Yeah.
We're gonna go. We're gonna
go hit 30. Go hit 30 today.
So so a lot of people they are adapting thermogenically to what's going on, and that's mostly fidgeting, moving, walking. You know, just this is thermogenically an adaptation. Yeah. And you will potentially reduce the number of calories that you're burning versus a person who's at that weight. So like if you're at this weight that you've come down to, you may burn up to, this is probably an extreme, of 15% less calories than someone who is at that weight and is maintaining at this weight consistently. So you're going to have a differential in. So now what happens though is that your body will get used to the calories you're at right now, and then eventually your thermogenic adaptation will fade off to zero, and you'll be at the same calories as someone who's already at this weight. So it's just time, but a lot of people adapt to it by simply modifying the number of steps they do. And
So with that
acknowledging-
adaptation, you basically have to just make sure that you're, keeping up with it, basically.
Yeah, that's all you do.
Yeah, okay.
You just have to burn more calories. Like,
Right.
it really, it's just kind of a funny thing. It's like, if I don't eat one day, I'm going to be really sluggish. That's kind of what's happening, right?
Right.
And how long does it take to get out of that mode? Like, you start eating more. Yeah, maybe a few months is kind of what the studies show. But
And
the
what
reality
about
is,
this? And what about this? Because this is a big question I had. Because once I started tracking macros, I started thinking more, intentionally about I need this many fats, this many carbs.
Yeah.
But how would you approach calories versus macros in terms of cutting and
most
prepping?
people, like, everyone's going to be slightly different. So there is, we could post up a couple studies that show that your numbers, but basically here's the way you approach it.
Right.
One is you need your protein, right? So that's king. Okay, so you're going to say, okay, I weigh. There's two ways to think of this. One is how much do you weigh now, and you base it on that, or the other one is how much do I need to weigh to be on stage. So for me, I'm over 200 pounds right now,
Right.
but I would even base my protein intake on 200 pounds. It's lower than where I'm at. So I'm going to take in 200 grams of protein a day. Then
So you're eating for where you want to be, not where you are.
Okay. Now, you can't go to extremes. You can't say, look, I need to lose 40 pounds, so I'm going to eat like a person who's 40 pounds less than me, right?
Right.
So I'm going to adjust protein first. That's my first step.
Okay.
The next one is I don't really want my fats to be too extremely low. And as we talked about, you have to shuttle hormones. That's an important deal. So generally for me, I don't want to ever see my fat numbers get less than 40 grams a day. So normally 50, maybe 55, even 60, depending on how I feel.
Yeah.
And I've had some experience, so I know how I feel based on how much fat I'm taking. The remainder is going to be obviously carbs, right?
Yeah.
Now you do need to maintain fiber. That's important. So you just keep your fiber numbers up to 25, 30, 35 grams per day if you can get there. So then what you need to do is you need to, throw your weight, your height, and everything into a calculator and say, okay, I think this is my number. This is my calorie number I need. Most people don't take into account the calories that they're going to burn when they are doing cardio.
Yeah.
So it's more or less the number of just kind of surviving the day and getting through normal life. And then you adjust your carbohydrates based on that number. So and then you drop the overall calories, and then mostly it's going to be in your carbs by say 500. You're almost rolling the dice, to be honest. So because
Vegas, baby.
Yeah, that's right.
You just gotta roll the dice
and see what happens.
See what happens and adjust from there. I want to shift gears a little bit here because one thing that I've always been interested in learning about how you've approached this is sort of the mental game, because a lot of this is really challenging. When you see everyone having a good time,
well, I think
suddenly they start speaking to you differently.
I think there's a really good podcast. We'll probably throw it into the description. It was done by Eric Helms, Andrea Valdez, and I think Omar, maybe. And it was about, they were going to talk you out of going into a competition. So like it's an hour and a half long podcast. Talk you out of a competition, and they go over all of the pitfalls of competing and what to be prepared for psychologically. Okay. So let's cover a couple of them.
Mindset, psychology.
Right? Basically one of the big ones that my takeaways is that when you go into a competition, your new paradigm of what your body can look like and does look like will monstrously change from where it was even a year ago, right?
This is true.
And it's a really big deal. Now you came down a lot in weight, and so your perception of who you were and like you're big, you come in the gym and you feel big, and you dropped how much weight now, roughly?
Around 80
pounds. Like, that's a massive difference in how you perceive your body, right? And so that will now be a new reference point for you, and that can be a challenge to a lot of people because they will see themselves at 6, 7, 8, 10, 12, 15% body fat, right? Depending if you're a man or a woman, and you're gonna forever look at yourself and wonder, well, where'd my abs go? Because after a show, I don't have abs today, right? I have abs at the show and I feel great about myself. You know, you go out in public, oh, my abs look so great. But then, you know, 2 months post-show, your abs have faded away, and you're not going to keep them up.
Right.
And that can be challenging to some people. Like psychologically, that can be a big. So that's one of them. Body dysmorphia is an interesting one because it's, and we should probably pull up the proper definition of it. But it's really when you look at your body and you have a misperception of the truth of what you're looking at.
Right.
So, and I guess, I don't know, people have thrown at us in the gym, oh, you have body dysmorphia, and it's like, do I have body dysmorphia, or am I just realistic? I know what I look like when I'm peeled down.
Yeah.
Do I have body dysmorphia? I know exactly what I'm gonna look like. I have no
So
dysmorphia.
is body dysmorphia the same as body delusion?
Yeah, it's
Because
like a
I think on the
delusion
higher
about it.
end, I might have
Yeah.
thought it was big, but now looking back, I'm like, no, I was.
Well, there's a disorder.
I just wanted to be accurate,
Yeah.
and then I was definitely overweight. And I know these words are triggering for people, and they mean things to people. That messed with me a little bit as I lost weight because it did generally happen pretty fast, you know, under a year.
Yeah.
And everything from my family to my friends, you know, they couldn't believe it, and I couldn't believe it. And I know I was dealing with understanding what this meant. You know, is this the real me? Was that the real me? What is going on? So these are the psychological challenges that you may face. Some people adapt better than others. Personally, I'm really happy that I did. I like the way that I look now.
Yeah.
And I don't think I would want to go back. But talk more about the psychological aspects of going through it multiple times because my first time, I have no reference point.
Yeah.
You keep going back for more.
Can't get
to
enough.
experience it all over again.
There's an addictive nature to it too. But there is, I was going to just to even jump back a little bit more, there is a term called bigorexia. And so it's guys
Never heard of that before.
that just cannot get big enough. So those are the guys that often start taking steroids and increasing them. And everyone's seen those like guys with 30-inch arms, you know, because they've injected oils and
We saw some today.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Impressive.
So psychologically too, though, like I think one thing that everyone absolutely has to be prepared for is the swing back to normal weight. So there's, and we're gonna reference Eric quite a bit, and Trexler and all the boys. Like there's these set points. And it's called dual intervention set points, where your body doesn't like to be really low, and also will defend higher points and lower points. So it's going to defend points.
Like an equilibrium point.
Yeah.
Multiple equilibrium points.
So there's a point at the bottom where it doesn't want to be there, and there's a point at the top that doesn't want to be there. And so that's one thing to be prepared for. You're not going to get to your stage ripped look and then just stay there.
Yeah.
And you know, and as you know, they talked about in their podcast too, is like it would be possible if you went in a room that was a locked room and someone gave you the exact amount of calories, you could stay at that weight forever. However, out in the real world, that doesn't happen. People go back to their weight. So that's one big thing.
Especially here in Las Vegas, that definitely does not happen. You can get whatever you want here. It's incredible.
One of the other things that happens to a lot of people too, and I don't know if this is, you know, more female dominated or male dominated, is you're going to go on stage and you're going to be judged, and so someone else is going to point at you and say whether you know, some people internalize and say this means you're good or you're not good, and that's not really what they're saying. They're just lining you up against other people. So I think
but that does mean there is some sort of ideal proportion, and you know, in the field that I'm in, we call it the golden proportions when it comes to the teeth. Is that the same thing with the body? There's these ideal Greek god type of proportions that you're trying to reach, depending on the category that you're competing in. Yeah. Describe that.
Well,
and the criticisms that you got along the way in your shows.
I think the thing you have to be prepared for is that you're given the body you're given your genetics, and so when you hear these influencers jump on and they say, oh, you can be anything you want, you just have to work for it, you just have to do it. It's not true, because I can't change the length of my wrist to my elbow, to my elbow to my shoulder. I can't change my shoulder girdle. I can't change my pelvis. Like, I can't change those things. I can't change the diameter of my bones. I can't change my height.
Yeah.
I can't change the color of my eyes. So there is things I can't change, and I'm gonna go on stage with my package, right? I could be the best possible me I could be, and I'm still not gonna win against someone who has a better genetic package than I do. And you just have to be prepared for that. And not everyone.
Sorry, just to clarify, by package you mean your whole body, what you bring to the competition.
Like where your bicep inserts or where the origin is. Like I can't change that without
your
surgery,
genetic.
Right?
Yeah, what you were born
package,
with,
right? It's your package. And so you're given your package, and everyone needs to, if they're going to go on stage, they need to be 100% prepared for the fact that you're dealt your genetic hand, and that's that. And now if your goal is to be perfect for you, you can be the perfect you with your genetic package, but you cannot be me. You're not going to be me. Right? I can't be you. And you really have to be prepared for that. Now, when I went on stage, I was very fortunate in my first couple of shows to do very, very well. But then I got my butt handed to me in a show, and I wasn't as good as someone else. And that hurt, like, because I'm competitive mostly. Like I wanted to win, I wanted to beat that guy. Of course. But the reality is, maybe he's just got a better genetic package than me. I don't necessarily think I could work. Like, I don't think I can work 50% harder. Right? Or I can change my diet 50% more and suddenly I'm not going to be Jay Cutler or Arnold Schwarzenegger because I changed those things. So you have to be prepared for that.
Right.
There is a certain in cutting. I think not everyone experiences this because I've talked to some athletes that they seem to get through prep and they're just like, yeah, it was easy, it wasn't a big deal. Likely they're pretty close to where their stage weight's going to be, so they're not dropping 40 or 50 pounds. They're dropping 5 to 10, 15 pounds, that sort of thing.
Which is what I'd like to do someday.
Yeah.
I don't want to have to lose this much weight prior to a show.
Oh yeah, it's brutal. In my first show I lost, I think I was in around 40-ish, 45 pounds is what I lost from my first show. And in my first show, in my prep, I hated it. Like I had a really big struggle with the amount of dieting I had to do and the amount of cardio I had to do. But in the second and subsequent shows, I learned to kind of embrace the stuff. Right. So that's what I always call. I just embrace it.
So each time did your mentality improve because 100%. You had different reference points, you knew what to expect, you were more prepared. Yeah. It gets better.
I didn't feel like I had to tell everybody. Because I was like in my first prep, probably subconsciously I wanted to get everyone involved. You know, I was like, hey, guess what I'm doing? Guess what I'm doing? I'm telling everybody. Yeah. But by the time I'm into the third show, I'm like, whatever. Nobody cares. Yeah. And they're gonna see it. I don't want to like drag everyone else down by I'm not feeling very good right now. So
what are the common criticisms that you would get going through this?
Yeah, we talk about this a lot, right? Like we talk about some of the stuff, and I think some of it is it's very subconsciously sabotaging what someone else is doing. Sure. It's like, and I think the biggest one is when you say, "Hey, I lost 80 pounds over a year." The first thing that someone's going to say is, "That's not healthy." That's not healthy. Yeah. Guess what? Neither was gaining 80 pounds.
That's right. If I had a nickel for every time, it's true. Like and I think it's dangerous to hear those things and take it personally. I think people just have different perspectives on this specific kind of sport, this specific kind of thing, and they're just trying to make sure you're okay, but it comes off as maybe a criticism of what you're doing, that maybe you're not living a healthy lifestyle.
And what's healthy? That's like defining good and bad. Like there's no definition of healthy. Healthy for one person is not healthy for another person.
Well, what's interesting is if you had an Olympic athlete who's extremely good at a specific sport, or it's extreme. Yeah, most people cannot do this. That's not considered unhealthy to go to the extremes for that. But why do you think it's so different in this industry that people would look at this thing and say, oh, that's extreme, but look at an Olympic athlete who does 20 flips in the air, lands dead on the spot and goes,
and we
that's
don't
fine, that's really great.
Judge them. I don't know why we need to judge.
Well, they're impressed. Versus this, they think there's a problem.
I think it's I don't know, we need Jordan Peterson here to discuss psychology, but Like I think what happens is there's this effect where I'm not that comfortable when someone's better than me.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm actually not that comfortable when they're way below me. So when I see someone who's bigger than me or smaller than me,
right.
It's kind of this micro-bullying sort of situation where like this person's leaning out, I'm not as lean as them, and micro-bullying, I'm going to say, well, you're not healthy anymore, and you're not doing it right, and you're being too aggressive, and you're going to lose all your muscle mass, and so what's the goal of that? Like,
so it's like a natural societal reversion to the mean, where people just want you to be in that zone where they're comfortable. Anything outside of that is extreme.
Yeah, like look, the reality is that if you're going to go on stage as an athlete in bodybuilding, whether it's women's physique or women's bikini or men's bodybuilding or men's physique, look, it's competitive dieting.
Yeah.
Whoever gets their body into the right spot, and that doesn't mean emaciating yourself, right? Like, that would be the wrong thing to say, but competitive dieting means I need to get my body to a point where it needs to be at.
Right.
And so competitively I need to eat properly to get enough, but I also need to eat way less so that I can get to the weight that I need to be at.
Yeah.
So I've lost that subcutaneous, visceral, and not visceral, but adipose tissue that is going to make me look fluffy and fat.
Yeah. So we talked about some, the most important things. We talked about some psychological effects and challenges along the way. Do you think it was worth it to obviously you've done it multiple times, but what drives you to do this?
I guess I'm a fairly competitive person in most things I do.
Okay.
And I like, when I get into something, I want to push myself as hard as I can.
Yeah.
And I like the test of a show. There's a test effect, So, you have a deadline, which is nice, and some people really respond well to deadlines. I do. And when I don't have a deadline, whether it's a show or a vacation or some other reason, I like that. Other people don't like that. Like other people, and maybe a coach would say, look, you shouldn't diet because you have a deadline.
Yeah.
You should always be healthy. You should always eat right. But for me and a lot of people, I think we diet on deadline, and we know what we need to accomplish by a certain date. So I don't know. I think I get out of it, the opportunity to jump on stage and see where I've gotten to I feel, as I shouldn't say that I feel good to beat other people. That seems egotistical and small.
Yeah.
But there's an element of you're being recognized for the effort you made, right?
Absolutely.
So, and some of it,
everybody wants that.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to be recognized for their efforts. It's not.
And I think one thing in bodybuilding, especially at the amateur levels, is that you go on stage, and even though you may not have the genetics and you may not have worked out as long, I think everyone's excited to be up there, and they're proud of people. Like the audience, genuinely. I've been on stage and emceed events, and the audience is genuinely excited to see people up on stage who have made an effort to get there.
Right.
And even if, I don't want to say someone didn't do a good job, but I've seen athletes on stage that they have not lost sufficient weight to be competitive.
Right.
But I don't know where they started. Like maybe a dude has dropped 80 pounds and he's at where he's at. And man, I couldn't be prouder of someone who's dropped 80. Like, how can you be proud of someone who's struggled through their 15-pound weight loss? Right?
Yeah.
Like, whatever, dude. But, and sure, they look great on stage. But, and I think some of this stuff gets lost in the ether of, I'm being judged. And someone's telling me I don't look as good as someone else. Yeah, that's exactly what's happening. But that's your reality. Like, be okay with who you are and what you have and your genetics that you have.
Right.
But take yourself to where you can go.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you really, I'm sure you have figured this out, but one of the biggest things about bodybuilding in general and weightlifting is really you're in full control of how you look. You may never look like Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, right? Like, because you're both Polynesian and you're both bodybuilding, but you may never look exactly like him, but you have every opportunity to control your weight. You can be, well, we know you can weigh 305. We also know you're capable of weighing 200. It's a choice, right?
That's right.
It's not something you are handed by society or the environment or anything. You have a choice.
Right.
And it's how you eat, it's how you work out, it's how it's how you live your life. That's empowering.
That's a great message. That's a great message. It's up to you. If this is what you want, if this is your choice, find you a coach, get some people around you that'll help.
You need supportive people.
I know for me, I needed to expose myself to the few individuals in my life that actually do this, so that I could be around them. Just being around you at the gym helped me get here, and is helping me get prepared for the show. And some closing thoughts here that
we should maybe hit up peak week too. Just as a quick thought on peak week.
Peak week. What is peak week?
So basically, if you took a 16-week period to cut into your show, okay, so you're basically 4-ish months, maybe it's 4 months and a week or whatever, or 3 months and whatever. So in the last week before your show, peak week, and this has more bearing, honestly, on guys and girls who are using anabolics than on natural athletes. But peak week is kind of the time when, if your diet's doing this, it's coming down the hill. Peak week is when you go into maintenance mode. Right. And it may have some ups and downs within it, but basically you peeled out. Here's the theory behind it: is that you're going to peel out your glycogen from your muscles, and you hear the word flat, and so you're going to look flat, which means that your muscles have lost water and glycogen. And then what we do is we take a whole pile of carbohydrates and just ram them in there. At some point, either beginning of the week, middle of the week, end of the week, whatever the case may be, we ram it back into your muscles. Your muscles hyper react to that and add more than they would have had normally. Right. So your muscles appear fuller. And there's some studies now actually that show that your muscles actually do look fuller when you do it. So now, here's the caveat to it. If you have a coach who's got their eye on you, hopefully you've gotten to a point before peak week where you can assess of where do you need to go before peak week. And maybe you don't have to do anything. Maybe you don't have to manipulate carbohydrates. Maybe you just keep doing what you're doing right up to the last few days before your show.
So this peak week is sort of a last chance to really dial in your look.
Yeah. And
by manipulating carbs and other things, water.
Most people would say that.
What are the factors that you're playing with at that point?
Most people it's carbs primarily. Almost exclusively carbs and salt. It's really the two. Okay. But most coaches would tell you that you can destroy good physique in peak week, but you're probably not gonna, night and day change it. You're gonna take someone from flat to full. Right. But it's very easy to destroy a physique by over carbohydrates, too much salt, too much water, and just kind of wrecking where they've gotten to. And you hear over and over and over again, constantly, that 4 or 5 days after the show is the best you've ever looked. So that's the coach's job, really, if you have a coach, is to dial that in and make sure when you hit that Saturday or Sunday for your show, you've gotten water, carbohydrates, salt, everything is dialed, and you're in the right spot. That's peak week. So for naturals,
and is this week, so it's a struggle the whole way, but is peak week particularly unique in any other ways? Peak week,
I think if you were on gear, peak week can be an amazingly bad week because you probably it's your last, you strip out, you're eating zero carbs, maybe, but ultimately peak week turns into a week of eating. You're right back into your maintenance and probably over maintenance numbers. So you're in a surplus at that point. And then you're kind of looking at water, but don't change much. Most people now are saying, look, if you're natural, maintain your water. Just don't adjust your carbohydrates other than to ram glucose in. Like keep your maintenance, ram some in. Keep your creatine levels consistent. Keep your proteins consistent. Don't change something that works. It's kind of the goal.
Okay. Yeah.
So don't change it if it works. Your workouts, maybe there's a little adjustment. You're probably going to lighten up a bit. You don't want to damage yourself. You probably won't do legs after, you know, there's maybe 4 or 5 days before your show. You cut legs off because you don't want to puff them up necessarily and make them look fluffy. So, but other than that, yeah, a lot of times coaches don't make any adjustments whatsoever for people. They'll just keep a natural person just going straight to the show. Yeah, yours will be fun. We don't know where you're going to be. So
yeah, we're going to find out. We're going to find out. So stay tuned to future videos because we're going to be filming the whole thing. We may start vlogging at some point, you know, just to kind of capture the last 8 weeks. But yeah, it's been a great experience so far. Thanks for spending the time to just give the big picture, most important things about prep. And yeah, it's
big shout out to Vegas.
Big shout out to Las
We went
Vegas,
to Dragon's Lair Gym, which was awesome.
This is an amazing gym. So I just gotta stay here for a minute. So the gyms we go to, you feel like, yeah, hey, was that?
The water, you're done with it?
No. But why?
Oh, seriously, you want it?
You know what? Here you go. You can have it. Yeah, man. There you go. You know, we walk in this gym and then pros everywhere, right?
Yeah.
So we felt small.
Yeah. We were the smallest.
It was a
guys
different
there.
experience. Just and it was like you were swimming with the sharks. Very, very serious. What did you feel when you went to?
It was a good vibe. Like I felt like
great vibe.
You know, like sometimes when you're the biggest guy in the gym, you don't work out very hard. When you're the smallest guy, it's like, man, I didn't work very hard.
See, but this is what we wanted. We wanted to come to Las Vegas, experience that. We did. Thank you, Dragon's Lair. Dragon's Lair?
Dragon's Lair Gym. Yeah, Dragon's
Lair
Gym.
We got the motivation we needed to push even harder.
All right.
Mission accomplished.
All right, man. Well, go show.
Go show. Let's do this.
All right. There we go.
Battery's supposed to die.
Yeah.
Good